Hi. So this morning I was just reflecting and I came across two chapters that really struck with me. And I was a bit too lazy to type it out. So, yeah, this is me. So, really just looking at being the salt and the light of the world. The first verse comes from Matthew 5, from verse 13 to 16, and the second one comes from John 8, verse 32. So, looking at Matthew 5, verse 13 to 16 in the Message translation, it says, "Let me tell you why you are here." So, today, let me tell you, fellow brother and sister in Christ, why you are here. You're here to be the salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be the light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. And I love the way the translation just really places every word with such purpose. Every word that's mentioned is so intentional, just us being the soul seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth, and it says if we lose our saltiness, how will people taste godliness? And just the way we preserve life through being salt, and how it says that we're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. Keep open house. And I want to really just elaborate more on just us keeping open house. I think many times we find it very easy, or we're more comfortable with sharing our light with people who already light. We're more, comfortable and in our comfort zones in being around other brethren, other Christians, and we're able to express ourselves because we're not really challenged in our walk with Christ, because brothers and sisters, we just share a verse or two, we fellowship, but we're not around the darkness. We're not around people who ask us questions about our faith, who challenge us and who get us thinking about why we're really Christian. Why do we believe that there's a God? How do we know he really exists? What proof do you have that this Jesus is here and that he saves? And the reason why you keep going to church is because there is a God, and who says you're not just lucky like the rest of us, but that you're blessed, and what makes you different to other religions that are out there? What makes Christianity the one, the way, the truth, and the life? And I think that is where we can't afford to dim our lights. We need to continue to shine bright. We need to find ourselves in the Word so that when we do find ourselves encountering people like that, we can stand so firmly on the Word, which is God. And it says, keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. And it reminded me of this analogy of how when you're at home and there's someone who's not home yet, you usually keep one of the lights in the house on. And usually when they get home, they'd switch it off. And you wouldn't lock the door if you know that there's people inside and that there's someone that's coming. And I believe in our lives, we need to keep the light on at home. And at home being this earth, in that there are people who are lost. There are people who, if they're passing in the streets, they can tell that there's someone at home, that there is light, there's direction. And Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus being the way, we are then placed as light on the street, on this road called life, so that people may see the way, that we may lead others to Christ. So we cannot afford to be dumb. We cannot afford to be weary and tired. We have to just keep going and really trust that God knows what he's doing and that he called you for a reason. God didn't say that you are to be the light. He said that you are the light. It's not an instrument that's placed in your hand. It's not a property of who you are. It is who you are. Like, that element of who you are is simply being light, and you need to radiate in God's goodness and mercy. And John 8 verse 12 in the NLT says, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. And I love the last part, which says that we will have the light that leads to life. And Jesus being the light, as he says that I am the light of the world, has also called us to be the light of the world, because being Christians means that we are Christ-like. And if Christ is light, then so can we do it. But the part that just wrecks me this morning is just it saying that we will have light that leads to life. I mean, that on its own is just saying we have Jesus that leads to Jesus, because Jesus being the light and also being the truth, the way, and the life simply means that we have Jesus who leads to himself. Jesus cannot lead us to anything else but himself. And even us on earth being the light, we cannot afford to lead others to a different direction. Being the salt of the earth means that we need to preserve Jesus Christ. We need to preserve the word. We need not dilute it, but bring taste to it. Bring out the God flavors of the earth. And even with just thinking of fish, you know, how fish can come from salty water, and yet it does not actually mean that they themselves are salty, if that makes sense. So we still need to bring our saltiness to the people. We still need to bring our saltiness to even the fish that are within the church, because sometimes you have people who are in the church, a place which is full of salt, and yet they're not salty. You need to actually add more salt when you start cooking it. And that's the process, is that the moment, you know, we find people within the church who actually need God, who actually need direction, that's when we need to actually have our jar filled with salt. We can't afford for it to keep running dry. And it's kind of impossible, because the word does say that our cup runs over. So it needs to run over of every little thing, you know. It's not that our lives should have salt, but it's that we should be so full of salt that it just keeps running and running and running and running. So really just be reminded that you are the salt and the light of the earth, and that someone is watching. Someone is out there who says, I need to go home. Someone is out there who says, I need direction. And if we are weary, then who is the one who's being that salt and the light? If we aren't light, it means that we do not have Christ, because Christ is light. So yes, keep on shining, keep on being generous with your lives, because in so doing, you are prompting others to be generous with God, who so gave freely, you know, his son, that we may have life, basically that we may have Christ. So in all that you do, put Christ at the center of it all.